Sarita, are you the one sharing the screen right now?
Yes.
You just have the little download tab at the bottom. If you want to X that, then we can see the full slideshow. There we go.
Oh, okay. And if before the land acknowledgement, I have trouble showing that screen, I'll just go with the flow. It's 6:02.
Yeah, I think we're okay to start.
But they're still in the breakout rooms. Should I close that screen?
The breakout room is done.
Okay. All right. So good evening and welcome everyone. My name is Sarita Day, and I am the coordinator of community engagement and partnership at Brampton Library. And with me from the library is Rachel Hopwood. So Rachel, give a wave, and she is the librarian for youth services at the library. So here we are celebrating National Youth Week 2021. And it is my pleasure to welcome you all to our very first virtual youth debate on the topic of rural versus urban sustainability. So I want to start the evening with our land acknowledgement. And so just give me a minute. To share the screen. All right. So here we are today. Although we are not gathering in person today, we would like to acknowledge the land that we all are most possibly situated on, the land which is known as Brampton, as the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. In particular, we note Indigenous, Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, Chippewa peoples as either the first inhabitants of this land, especially near the Credit and Humber rivers, who now continue to reside on the care for this land or as those passing through this land. This land that is home to the Métis and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The Huron-Wendat farmed vegetables, fished, hunted, and lived in long houses. Then when the Europeans arrived in the 1600s, and became enemies. Then when the Europeans arrived in the 1600s, French traders allied with the Huron-Wendat and became enemies with the Haudenosaunee. The withdrawal of the French traders of the Haudenosaunee and the decimation of the Huron-Wendat peoples following the Iroquois War led to the migration of the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, to the Brampton area. Settlers and colonizers in 1853 incorporated and named this land as a town called Brampton, deriving the name from British influence. Whether we are out on the streets, in our parks, hiking along local trails in the Brampton area, these are good places to reflect upon our identities as settlers on this land and appreciate the historic significance of this land. The long ago uses of its medicines, its cultivations, and migrations that traverse this land. In acknowledging the indigenous history and peoples of this land, we only begin to appreciate the injustices that they have and continue to face, and hope this recognition sparks further acts of allyship and solidarity. Both Community Climate Council and Brampton Library are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, currently virtually, and by doing so, both organizations would like to give our respect to its first inhabitants and encourage you to learn more. Thank you. I will now give you a few library updates. Currently, all our 8 branches are closed for in-person services. However, our curbside pickup services are open. Our digital library is available 24/7, and to visit what is happening at the library, you can see all our virtual programs by clicking on the calendar of events. And to find out the latest updates that are happening at the library, please go or visit bramptonlibrary.ca. And not to forget, for this week, please check the National Youth Week page, where we have a listing of achievements from our youth. For example, Faria Naz, her reflections on a dear younger self, a booklet that she has created, our book reviews by our youth volunteers, and reflections on volunteerism by our youth. I have to say that this evening session would not be possible without the hard work of our library youth volunteers and the mentors from the Community Climate Council. In a very short time, they have researched and learned about the topic, and we wish them all the best this evening. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Aris from the council. So take it away, Aris.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Let me start off by telling you a bit more about the Community Climate Council. So we are a youth-funded, youth-led, not-for-profit organization advocating for local climate action through enhancing climate literacy and also political advocacy in the region of Peel. We were founded on the desire to create a platform for the community members to call for bold local climate action and also policy change, and to work on developing our own kind of community-led climate solutions. The Community Climate Council is comprised of young residents from the Peel region, including Brampton, who are passionate about the political and non-political processes in taking climate action. You'll see quite a lot of people in here today who are from the Community Climate Council, myself included. We are working with other community organizations and nonprofits to educate, inform, and empower our communities to understand the climate crisis, the reality of the crisis at hand, that is, and also the immediate actions that we and also our policymakers can take. This is one of the initiatives that we've been doing, and we're very happy to be collaborating with Brampton Library on this debate. So essentially, the idea behind the debate is for us to explore a bit more about the climate emergency. Global warming and climate change threatens the landscape that we live in, and it also impacts the living condition of our planet. Of course, there's there's a lot more that we can do in terms of learning how to live more sustainably, and learning how we contribute to greenhouse gas emissions and how we can contribute towards taking that action. So the questions that we have for our own sake are, can we live sustainability in urban areas and be conscious of the way that we use the land, whether that's urban or that's rural? So the question again is it possible to be green in a concrete jungle if we're talking about urban areas? And if we're talking about rural areas, we also need to consider how to be more sustainable in terms of the farmlands that we have, how to be sustainable in terms of the population sprawl, and also how to be sustainable in continuing the development between urbanization and rural areas. Both of these areas need to be more conducive in the fight that we have against climate change. So today, the debate will be delivered in a British parliamentary style, and it's going to be centered on 3 topics, and we're looking urban versus rural sustainability, addressing land use, sustainable planning, and also energy use. As I mentioned before, this is a collaboration. We're very happy that we get to do this with Brampton Library, and very happy that you're here to hear our amazing teams talk about what they've learned so far about the different topics, and for us to hear different points of views and arguments about these 3 main central topics on rural and urban sustainability. I'm very excited for the debate, and I hope you are too. You can interact by posting any questions you have in the chat box about any of the debate points or any of the arguments, and we will take those in after the debate. I would like to introduce some people who are going to be helping us along the way. So we have a co-moderator, Shreya, and also Divya. Divya is going to be managing the question and answer session for you in between the debate and the decision making and the judging process. We have 3 judges, myself from the Community Climate Council, Shreya, who's a volunteer with the Brampton Library, and Elizabeth, who is from the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Also very happy to announce and introduce the coaches we have. From the Community Climate Council, we have LJ, who is leading the team Rural, and Bani, who is leading the team Urban. I'm going to pass over to Shreya to talk a bit more about the rules of the debate and also to introduce the rest of the teams.
Thank you, Arish. So, hello, everybody. My name is Shreya. I'm a grade 12 student at North Park Secondary School, and I have been volunteering with Brampton Library for about 3 years now. So I have an interest in learning about climate change, and I'm also in my school's debate team, which are the reasons why I'm here today. As Arish has mentioned, I'm going to be co-moderating with her. So before we get into the debate, as we're all excited to do, I'm going to quickly explain the structure we'll be following. So to begin, we'll have a speaker from each side present their introductory statements, which will last about 3 minutes each. Then a speaker from each team will have 4 minutes each to present their first arguments, and then an additional 2 minutes to answer the opposing team's questions. This will address land use. Then the second speakers from each team will discuss sustainable planning, and again, they will have 4 minutes to do so and 2 minutes to answer questions posed by the opposing team. Finally, our third speakers will have 4 minutes each to speak about energy use, 2 minutes to answer questions, and to wrap up, we will have a speaker from each side make a summary statement, and those summary statements will last 4 minutes each. So throughout the debate, we are looking to see which team effectively addresses our overarching themes when they answer the following questions. With regards to land use, we want to see which region has more sustainable land and resource management practices. When it comes to sustainable planning, we want to see which region is making more progress in sustainable planning and implementation. And with respect to energy use, we want to see which region has more potential for renewable energy deployment. So we will now begin our debate. To begin, we have Rabia from Team Urban. She is a grade 11 student at Bramley Secondary School who has been volunteering with Brampton Library for 2 years because it has given her countless opportunities and has taught her many skills. She is taking part in this debate to learn new information and strengthen her skills, all while doing something she loves. She will now give us her introductory statement. Rabia, you have 3 minutes.
Urban areas. I'm sure as I say those words, a picture is already painted in your heads and how they may be. Lots of buildings and crowds of people going about their daily routines. However, we ask you to start with a blank canvas and open your minds to the potential it holds. Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Rabia Ahmed, and today my group and I are here to paint a more factual picture on the opportunities and benefits of urban areas through a sustainable lens. We will discuss how urban areas are more sustainable than rural through their land use, sustainable planning, and energy use. Currently, around 81%. 81% of Canada's population lives in cities. If we were to take this number and try to spread the people out across the mass of this land, it would be difficult to accomplish. We would have to build more homes, accommodate against the climate, provide clean water, food, other basic essentials, and so much more in order to make these rural areas more sustainable. Enough for people to survive. After all that, those areas would be in an urbanization process. Many aspects are taken into consideration while bringing so many people together in cities. These include transportation, land use planning such as waste management, pollution control, economy, more opportunities, the environment, and of course, the people, all of which falls into sustainability. This is disregarding the fact that every tiny detail, someone somewhere had to come together with many ideas to tackle these problems. And yet, here we are dismissing the details by only seeing urban areas as buildings. Taking a look at the general picture, a mass of land for a rural area would, let's say, accommodate for 10 people, whereas an urban area, the same size of land would accommodate for 100. Same goes for pollution and energy consumption. For example, let's say a few people eat 2 breads a day, whereas others eat 1 a day and some get none at all. If those few people were to now eat 1 bread instead of 2, there would be enough for everyone else. Therefore, showing us that cities are more sustainable. Other main reasons as to why is because a lot of resources are put closer together. There is better public transport, such as bicycle lanes, which also contributes to less pollution, and there's easy access to resources. In addition to that, cities also have higher density, which means more people, leading to more capacity to reduce emissions and switch to renewable resources. It gets even better from here because these are just some of the positives. My team will go into further details in their upcoming arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabia. So now we will have Jenny from Team Burrell. She is a grade 11 student from Harold M. Brathwaite Secondary School, and she's been volunteering with Brampton Library for over a year now because it provides her the opportunity to gain valuable experience and the opportunity to expand her knowledge and skills. She's volunteered for this event because she's interested in learning about climate change and wants to raise awareness of the severity of the current climate issues. She will now give us her introductory statement. Jenny, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start this debate by expressing my gratitude to all the audience. My name is Jenny, and I am working with Gerling, Crucially, Urham, and Abinayan. Today, we as a team are going to introduce and talk about the sustainable development of rural communities. In the end, you will learn that rural areas have more potential than urban areas to achieve sustainability. Rural communities comprise 45% of the world's population and about 87% of our total inhabitable land. Rural regions are often characterized by a low population and settlement density, as well as a high proportion of natural assets and agricultural land. These regions provide an important foundation for human well-being through the supply of food, water, energy, raw materials, and other important ecosystem services. More than that, rural communities make significant contributions to our economic growth. In Canada, for example, 23% of our population are working in rural settings, and they generate 27% of our national GDP. Over the past few decades, the growing population and the rapid rural-urban migration have created many challenges for rural communities to achieve sustainable development. However, these communities are putting forward innovative projects to tackle these challenges. They have undergone profound transformation to meet the needs of the growing population, to improve the social and economic condition of rural dwellers, and to protect natural resources for future generations. Our team has developed three main arguments that support rural sustainability regarding land use, sustainable planning, and the deployment of renewable energy. We believe that rural areas have greater potential to achieve sustainability, given the reason that first, the adoption of technologies on farmland have enhanced productivity and sustainability of farming, which allows farmers to produce more food without having to expand their agricultural lands. Secondly, we argue that rural living provides unique opportunities to strengthen economic growth, to minimize resources consumption, and provide better quality of life, which are key elements of sustainable development. Last but not least, we believe that rural areas have the locational advantages when it comes to the deployment of renewable energies. Furthermore, renewable energy has the potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide remote rural regions with reliable and cheap energy, while contributing to economic growth and environmental security of rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So those were our introductory statements. Before we get into the arguments, I'm just going to restate the questions we are focusing this debate around. Firstly, which region has more sustainable land and resource management practices? The second question asks which region is making more progress in sustainable planning and implementation. And our final question is which region has more potential for renewable energy deployment? We will now have Akanksha give us Team Urban's first argument concerning land use. Akanksha is a grade 10 student from Central Peel Secondary School. She's been volunteering with the Brampton Library for just over a year because she wants to be more active in her community and help people feel welcome. The main inspiration for joining this event was her interest in this topic, as well as trying out new activities that are outside of her comfort zone. Akanksha, you have 4 minutes for your argument and 2 for any questions.
Urban areas definitely have more sustainable land and resource management practices than rural areas for numerous reasons. According to Michigan State University, land use refers to the purpose the land serves by carrying out operations on the land with the intention to obtain products or resources. Sustainable land use ensures more environmentally friendly and efficient options. My group believes urban areas are better at land use as they have better public transit. They design their land to use the least amount of land to accommodate the most amount of people, and more people have access to resources living in urban areas. To start off, urban areas are more compact because they make good use of their small land area to ensure that everything is close by, and for places farther away, there's always the option of public transit. Urban areas have better public transportation systems in place, which encourages people to use that for their own benefit and the benefit of the environment, as well as allows people to easily access different resources within a matter of minutes. For example, Green Manhattan, an article from 2004, states that 82% of employed Manhattanites travel to work by public transit, bicycle, or on foot. Additionally, according to Census Canada, 43% of commuters living in Toronto commonly used a form of sustainable transportation as their main mode of commuting in 2016. Most cities are working towards implementing electric public transit for the benefit of everyone and the environment. This is easier to do in urban areas than rural areas as the resources needed are easily accessible and affordable and available. Furthermore, countless cities across the world are partaking in the 20-minute city, where everything a person possibly needs, such as shelter, grocery, library, schools, healthcare centers, etc., are within a 20-minute traveling vicinity. This is obviously beneficial for everyone, but elders and younger individuals who are the most vulnerable because they need more assistance will benefit the most. Another thing to point out is that public transportation in metropolitan areas can support people of different accessibility needs in all ages, unlike rural areas. As you can see, urban areas definitely have better public transportation systems and are working towards making them even more efficient and environmentally friendly. The next reason why urban areas are better at land use is because nothing goes to waste. Everything is planned meticulously for maximum benefit. For example, buildings are designed to be the best, and most modern buildings have green areas such as green roofs, to reduce air pollution by shading building surfaces, deflecting radiation from the sun, and then releasing moisture and clear air into the atmosphere. They also provide food. Some may argue that rural areas have more open and green spaces than urban areas. However, those open spaces have no particular purpose compared to the few open spaces in urban areas, which are more well-planned and designed. For instance, if there was a park in an urban city, there would be environmental signs protecting wildlife, as well as more accommodations for people of all backgrounds, since urban areas are more diverse, such as ramps in place of stairs for people using wheelchairs. Additionally, rural areas produce a considerable amount of air pollution. According to Colgate University, developing rural areas are worse off in air quality than developing cities because rural areas rely more on biomass fuels for cooking and heating. This makes air pollution far less visible in rural areas than in the urban outdoors. To add on, most rural areas are used for agricultural purposes. To maintain this large land area and grow the best produce, homeowners use a lot of chemical fertilizers, which is the leading cause of air pollution in rural areas. Overall, urban areas are far better at land use as they care for their city and citizens by providing adequate public transportation and using the land for their benefit. Thank you.
So at this point of time, I think we're having 2 minutes of questions.
So I have a question. First off, thank you for presenting your points, but I wanted some clarification. Again and again, your team pointed out that transportation in rural areas is better and more sustainable, but this directly contradicts statistics from Statistics Canada that say that per capita, urban areas actually produce more air pollution from transportation than rural areas. So I would argue that it's not the land use that is to blame here, but the fast-paced, consumption-based lifestyles of urban areas. How would you respond to that?
I would say so. Urban areas do produce pollution from public transportation more than rural areas do, but that's mainly because rural areas don't have as advanced public transportation systems as urban areas, and urban areas are also trying to implement like newer and more efficient transportation, electric public transportation, to lower these emissions. So that's how I would respond.
So I have another question. Something else in your land use was that there's smaller living quarters and therefore more people can live in a certain area. And while that may be more sustainable in terms of the environment, I wanted to ask, how does that factor into mental health? Because urban areas have a lot lower mental health than rural areas, and it might not be the right lifestyle for everybody and therefore not sustainable for us.
For mental health, I think in urban areas, there's a lot more resources available for people who have mental health, who are facing mental health issues, and they can easily access that in urban areas, whereas in rural areas, they have to travel farther distances and they might not be able to contact people for their health, mental health.
Time's up.
Thank you. Thank you, Akanksha. We now have Gerline, a grade 10 student from Central Peel Secondary School. She volunteers with Brampton Library as it's a community that she feels makes her a better person. She's been volunteering for 2 years and felt inspired to volunteer for this event because she has a history in debating. Additionally, advocating for the environment is something she wholeheartedly believes in, and she will now give us Team Rural's first argument concerning land use. You have 4 minutes for your argument and 2 for questions.
Thank you. So before I say anything to you guys, my opponents, the judges, and of course the audience, I feel it is important to recognize the difference between what is idealistic and what is realistic, what is hopeful and what is sustainable. The urban side has tried to convince you that 7 billion people can live off of the densely packed urban areas that only make up a small minority of our Earth's surface. But this is not sustainability. This is simply unrealistic. In order to sustain our environment and our basic needs, rural areas are and will always be included in our plan for land use. Firstly, it is clear to say that farming in rural areas is just far more efficient due to industrialization. Having large designated areas for farmland makes it easier for large machines to operate, and takes less labor. Whereas the suggested alternative in urban farmings would be microfarming, which requires much more intensive labor, which means the price of food will inevitably go up. Taking into account the already high poverty rates and increasing cost of food in our world, is this sustainable or even realistic? Urban farming also comes with the risk of contaminated soil, as urban areas are closer to industrial areas and the soil does not experience the natural cleansing cycles of the environment that it would in a more natural setting. This poses obvious health concerns that we simply cannot overlook. Not to mention, livestock requires lots and lots of land and crops to grow, so if meat consumption is to continue, rural areas are inevitably going to have to exist. Considering that 95% of the population still eats meat, and it is the most efficient source of protein that we know of, it is safe to assume that meat production cannot be so easily disposed of. Secondly, rural land usage is much more sustainable in terms of supporting renewable energy sources, which will inevitably come up later in the debate. But these energy sources, which reduce fossil fuels, increase jobs, and make way for a new green economy, require rural land for them to be effective on a large scale. Think windmills or solar panels, which need large areas of plain land. Squeezing them into every possible space in urban areas just won't cut it. In fact, in Ontario, our largest wind farms, Harvey Inlet, Wolfe Island, Underwood, etc., are all located in rural areas. In order to make a complete switch over to renewable energy sources, which is, I'm sure, all of our goal, it is inevitable that rural areas will have to come into play. Now, if the concern that rural areas are somehow harmful for the environment comes up, I'm going to propose a scenario to you. Say that it is estimated that over 70% of the world's population will live in a city by 2050, but this is only 2% of the land surface. Say that due to urban flight, acres and acres of previously used rural land is abandoned. This area now no longer being able to revert to its natural ecosystem state or being used for agriculture is rendered useless. Unfortunately, this isn't a hypothetical scenario. This is the reality of our world, and the solution is not to continue densifying urban areas until eventually urban sprawl is needed, which is the expansion of poorly planned, low-density, auto-dependent development. The solution is to leave room for rural areas, to make use of the 98% of land for energy and nourishment. The maintenance of rural areas allows space for greenery, for us to live alongside our environment rather than abandon it. The land use strategy of rural areas is crucial for the sustainability of our planet on many levels, for our basic needs, our environment, our renewable energy sources, and for us to exist as within our earth and using our earth. Thank you.
Two minutes for questions.
Hi. So my first question is that you mentioned contaminated soil, that contaminated soil in urban areas is very bad for the environment, but rural areas have agricultural land which use chemical fertilizers, which further contaminates the land in rural. How to respond to that? And also the contamination levels are the leading cause in air pollution in rural areas. So what's your response?
Okay, so as for the fertilizer, well, yes, that may be true. There are restrictions on that, and nobody can deny that it is not inherently as harmful as the contamination that might happen in urban areas. As for the fertilizer, there might be some health side effects, but as of now, we are all okay and healthy. But the contamination I'm talking about in urban areas would be far worse because of the factories that are surrounding it or the small spaces that it is farmed in. There's not as much regulation, and the results of it could be far more hurtful than what we all know. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear your second question because I think you were cutting out. Could you repeat it?
I think my second question was that, like, fertilizers, chemical fertilizers that are used in rural agriculture are the leading cause in air pollution in rural areas. So what would your response be to that? How would rural areas be able to change that?
Well, like you mentioned before, we are always coming up with new solutions, and this doesn't really have much to do with land use. This is an internal problem, but it can be solved without altering the land use of rural areas. So therefore, I think for this argument, it could be rendered irrelevant. But that is a concern, and we are always coming up with new solutions for it. Thank you for your question.
I also have a question, if that's okay.
Enough time.
We don't have time.
Okay.
Sorry, unfortunately, that was protected time. So thank you, Gerline. We are now going to have Aditi from Team Urban. She's a grade 10 student attending Heart Lake Secondary School who has been volunteering at Brampton Library for a year and a couple months now. She believes that the Brampton Library is a place to create a community that is more engaged and stronger together and wants to help promote that and have a part. She wants to educate herself with this opportunity, which is why she joined this debate, and she will now give us Team Urban's second argument concerning sustainable planning. You have 4 minutes for your argument and 2 for questions.
Based on WithPress's definition of sustainability, sustainability refers to what we do now and how it will influence our future generations. Sustainable planning also involves thinking about incorporating the public's preferences and modern society needs in our everyday living. And when thinking about these criteria, we see a bustling urban city with its public transportation, sustainable practices, and its beneficiality towards our environment and economy, which is why my group believes urbanization is creating further and significantly more progress in sustainable planning and implementation. Primarily living in a city, everything is located within walking distance. These amenities can include groceries, essential shopping, school, entertainment, and others. A majority of citizens have said that they only travel by foot to get to a destination in the neighborhood, or for exercise when responding to Yale Environment 360 survey. When we put these 2 bits of information together, you can see that living in an urban area enables citizens to travel by active transportation rather than using a car. Cities have also implemented bike lanes, walking paths, and pedestrian-friendly streets around every single corner of the neighborhood to make active transportation a more convenient option than driving. Moving on to my next point, as an ongoing change in a response to a climate crisis, cities everywhere have been striving to implement sustainable practices. For example, in San Francisco, recycling and composting mandates have helped the city achieve a waste diversion of more than 77%. In Vancouver, the entire region runs 93% of their electricity on sustainable resources. I can also go on about many cities that have switched to sustainable diversity, but that would take up too much time. And you may be thinking that cities are highly populated and use many buildings, but being green doesn't put sustainable in sustainable city. It's about creating an atmosphere where we can maintain our land to help future generations. For example, did you know that New York is listed number 14 in the world's most sustainable cities? Despite the high diverse neighborhoods, public spaces, and despite the high density population, the city has successfully implemented diverse neighborhoods, public spaces, and many opportunities such as jobs, education, and lifestyle. Besides that, hundreds of different cities have also created initiatives to reach a sustainable lifestyle. For example, in 2030, Fayetteville, Arkansas plans to run its building with 100% clean energy. By 2025, Schiedam, a city located in the Netherlands, plans to add various social improvements to encourage citizens to make sustainable decisions. And moving on to my final point, urban regions have seen many benefits from promoting sustainable planning and implementation towards our environment. In Canada, 81% of citizens live in cities, which leaves 19% in rural areas. Various studies have shown that the higher density population in areas would result in less consumption of resources. It is not only beneficial, but it's also faster and affordable. Cities have captured more than 80% of the world's economic activity, offering millions of opportunities for every single person and business. Living in cities has helped residents achieve sustainability in their lives by providing the resources they need. And it doesn't stop there. Urban cities are also on their way to promote more sustainability. For example, cities are planning to incorporate urban farming to cut down GHG emissions. They're implementing vehicle charging stations to encourage eco-friendly cars. And lastly, to create a smart growth community in every city. In conclusion, due to its public transportation, sustainable practices, and its beneficiality towards our environment and economy, urban regions are creating further and significantly more progress when it comes to sustainable planning and implementation. Thank you.
Okay, 2 minutes for questions.
I had a question. Okay, so thank you for your points, but I would like to ask you, so in urban urban cities, how would you protect the environment? Because there's several buildings put in place and trees are cut down just for the sake of building the buildings. So how do you want to respond to that?
Thank you for your question. Cities have community gardens where we build community and increase food security. Also, sustainable planning is about giving all the resources and opportunities needed for every single person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I guess I'm going to move on then. So thank you, Aditi. Now we're going to have Kashleen from Team Rural, and she's going to give us her Team Rural's second argument on sustainable planning. So Kashleen is a grade 11 student at Chinguacousy Secondary School. She's been volunteering with Brampton Library for about 3 years now, and the big reasons are her passion for books and giving back to the community. She took this debate opportunity to help build up her debating skills and to talk more about the environment. She is a part of the Eco Council she's a part of the Eco Council in her school, and thought this opportunity would allow her to create awareness of such topics. So you can begin. You have 4 minutes for your argument, 2 for questions.
Thank you. During rural development, it is crucial to take into account the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic viability, environmental protection, and social equity. In regards to economic viability, rural communities have great land areas, allowing agricultural activities to take place. As stated by Justin Lin on the International Food Policy Research Institute, agriculture is the key for economic transformation, food security, and nutrition. Given the large area in rural communities, sustainable development is practicable. Along with this, there are several jobs created, allowing more profits incoming towards the community. Agriculture is quite significant in rural districts, as they represent more than 50% of the workforce. Due to this, it is vital to include large masses of land to allow agriculture activities, which is not possible in metropolitan areas. Environmental protection is also another important aspect to have while sustainably planning development in areas of living. These natural resources used by the community must be taken at a sustainable rate, preventing the loss of these supplies for future generations. Rural communities are more sustainable in this aspect, utilizing whatever they can to live life more efficiently and naturally. The resources are not used in bulks, but in small amounts, preventing the loss or even extinction of these supplies. Many of these required essentials for a living are either collected or grown at home. For instance, water is collected through rainwater or wells, and crops are grown at home through the agricultural aspect. Finally, the social equity viewpoint needs to be taken into consideration in sustainable development planning. Everyone needs to be provided with enough resources, but not an equal amount to live. For some individuals may require more supplies than others, and some may require less. In rural communities, everyone is provided with the resources they require to live a normal life. The amount of food you require can be grown at home or bought locally without having to travel far distances, and water is provided by rain or through common wells located nearby. The health and wellness perspective is also included within the social equity portion and is more concerning in urban communities. According to statistics, approximately 38% of mental health disorders are present in metropolitan areas compared to rural areas. Specifically, depression is 39% more common, while anxiety disorders are 21% more prevalent, along with the doubled schizophrenia rates. On the flip side, rural communities are scientifically proven to have less mental health problems. Stated by the University of Minnesota, being in nature, or even viewing scenes of nature, reduces the anger, fear, and stress, and increases pleasant feelings. Exposure to nature not only makes you feel better emotionally, but also contributes to your physical well-being, reducing blood pressure, muscle tension, heart rate, and the production of stress hormones. To conclude, Rural communities have the ability to practically develop their areas as they meet the needs of the three pillars of sustainability: economic viability, environmental protection, and the social equity equity aspect. Urban communities, along with their benefits, are unable to protect the environment and are having increasing mental health problems as a loss on their end. Rural communities are much more capable of meeting all these standards of a sustainable city and have done so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes for questions starts now.
I have a question. You said that everyone in rural areas get the amount of resources they need. This is not entirely true. There are low-income people living in rural areas too. What do you have to say to that?
So as you mentioned, there are some low-income people, and as I was mentioning, like people can grow crops at home as they have a large area of land, so they're able to grow their crops at home, and that can also serve as a business as well to increase profits. So and not like compared to urban communities, if you do not have enough profits, you're unable to buy enough food or water to provide for your families. But in rural communities, this can be done naturally.
Thank you. I have another question. So you've said that also rural areas have helped made people more or relieve stress, blood pressure, and mental health disorders. But studies have shown that living in urban areas can also like studies have shown that living in urban areas can feel more safe for people, as well as it helps with interaction and social development. If 81% of in the Earth's population are cities and 19% are rural areas, how would that work?
So as you were saying, there are some ways in urban communities people feel safer. However, the urban aspect is more stressful. There's lots of stress that causes people to have several issues, mental health issues. And in rural communities, it's proven that nature has helped lots of people relieve the stress, relieve any tension they have, which is why rural communities are better and they have less mental health disorders compared to urban communities. Thank you for your questions.
Thumbs up.
Thank you, Kushleen. We will now have Shraddha from Team Urban give us her third argument, which will be about energy use. So Shraddha is a grade 11 student from North Park Secondary School. She's been volunteering with the Brampton Library for a year and 3 months now, and she volunteers with us because it is everything she loves, communicating with the world and having love for books. She loves debating about world issues, and so when she heard that an amazing debate with training was happening, she just had to sign up immediately. So you can begin. You'll have up to 4 minutes for your argument and 2 for questions.
Hello, everyone. We think that urban areas have more potential for renewable energy development than rural areas because of higher density, easy access to resources, and the major impact that even the smallest actions make. To start off, higher density in urban areas give more opportunity to implement advanced technologies like renewable energy sources. The large population in cities means more job opportunities, which attracts the attention of the engineers who can design and develop these renewable energy making gadgets. For example, in Australia, the aim is to increase light efficiency by substituting streetlights with efficient sources. Australia has the tech people who can produce the items that can provide renewable energy. Furthermore, the denser population means that everything is close by, so it is easier to supply energy to shorter distances compared to rural areas where everything is so much more widespread. A shorter wire can carry more current, but a longer wire just provides more resistance. Additionally, people are generally more acceptable to changes in the city rather than rural areas. With so many people living in one area, changes keep happening. However, in the rural areas, where houses are more spread apart, it will be harder for them to accept and transition to renewable energy sources. As you can see, urban areas have definitely more opportunities to switch to renewable energy sources, which gives them a higher potential for renewable energy use than rural areas. The second reason why urban areas have more potential for renewable energy use is because they have more resources and infrastructure. Because cities already have better, more connected public transit networks, it is easier for professionals to implement sustainable technologies. The infrastructure needed is already there.
In rural areas, when it takes an hour for a person to get proper equipment, it's likely that he will not want to spend that much time. Furthermore, cities also have the resources to make traveling more convenient for city dwellers. A solid example of this is the electric car. When both sides, urban and rural, are being given these electric cars, which are such a wonderful example of renewable energy use, rural still has to say no. Why, you ask? The biggest problem with rural areas having electric cars is that there are not enough charging stations, and it's longer distances to drive. They do not have enough charging stations because one, they do not have enough resources to make them, and two, the distances are further apart, so they should need even more charging stations than urban areas. Resource is a very important factor that determines the potential because resources allows dreams to become reality. Ontario in 2005 only had 27% renewable energy, but by 2016, by using its resources, capacity, and the technologies provided, it was using 41.7% renewable energy, showing a steady climb for the usage of renewable energies in Ontario. In Toronto itself, the University of Toronto and the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority have come together to study specific renewable energy technologies like solar PV, ground source heat pump, solar thermals, etc. So it is evident that in cities have more resources and access to resources, which can potentially help them in the future when they are switching to renewable energy sources. Lastly, urban areas have more potential for renewable energy use because they have a larger impact. When 1,000 people live in an apartment, it only takes one building to switch to renewable energy for many households to change. Because of this, more than 20 UK cities have committed to switching to 100% renewables by 2050. People are also more likely to change because it is convenient. When there are so many people using the same energy source, each person has to do less work to switch to renewable energy. For example, in Canada, Vancouver gets 98% of its energy by renewable sources. Therefore, because of the impact that cities have, even the smallest changes among so many people can make a huge difference, allowing cities to have more incentive to switch to renewable sources. To conclude, because of the opportunities and dense population, the resources, and the impact, cities have more potential for renewable energy use than—
Time's up. I'm sorry I have to cut you in.
All right, so 2 minutes for questions.
Sorry, Raheem, you can go first.
I was just gonna say, seeing that wind energy is grown exponentially and how in urban areas the buildings actually restrict airflow quite a bit, it seems really unwise to use any form of wind energy in urban areas to harvest that energy because it's just not as efficient. Similarly, solar energy is blocked by the shadows of buildings, making it even less efficient. So what would you say to that?
First of all, wind energy is not actually that inefficient in cities because cities are close by. If you have a windmill at the edge of the city, it is very easy to get that energy to the city. Whereas in rural areas, if you have a windmill, the houses are so spread apart that it takes a lot more wire and a lot of energy gets wasted because of resistance. Second, what was your second point? Solar panels. Well, buildings on top, they put solar panels. So I think that is a good way to use the solar panels in cities. Also, and cities can also always use hydroelectric power, which Vancouver uses and gets 98% of its energy by those hydroelectric power.
So you mentioned that wind energy is better collected at the edge of cities, which is technically closer to rural areas. So would your point be that in a rural area, it technically is easier to collect wind power?
Well, as I said, rural areas are so widespread. In your introduction, you mentioned that rural area takes about 85% of the Earth's land, whereas cities, well, in retrospect, cities take about 15% then. So giving that energy to 15% is so much more easier than giving energy to 85% of the world.
Right, that's about the implementation, but for the collection, do you agree that on the edge of a city or therefore closer to rural areas, it is easier to collect?
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. We can't take any more questions now.
Am I allowed to answer this question? Okay, so no, I do not agree with that. The collection is not the important thing. The important thing is that the houses get the energy. So since urban areas are getting the energy, I would say that urban areas are the winners here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shraddha. So we are now going to have Ruhaim from Team Rural give us his third argument on energy use. He is a grade 10 student at Central Peel Secondary School, and he's been volunteering with the Brampton Library for almost 2 years to be more engaged and to give back to his community. He was inspired to volunteer for this event when he realized it discussed climate change, an issue he's felt strongly about, and he felt as though it would be both fascinating and amusing to conduct research and participate in a productive debate with like-minded individuals. Rahim, you have 4 minutes for your argument and 2 for questions.
Okay, the development of renewable energy is crucial for humanity's survival. Rural regions have the greatest potential for renewable energy deployment, especially when compared to urban areas. With the utilization of rural regions for renewable energy, resources are more readily available, greater economic potential is present, and renewable energy deployment would be much more beneficial and efficient. Firstly, rural regions provide the necessary conditions to maximize the energy produced by renewable energy deployment by providing readily available resources. Whether it be the use of sunlight, wind, flowing water, or biomass, rural regions can swiftly make use of these resources to maximize energy production. Comparatively, urban areas have limited renewable resources, as the vast number of buildings may block sunlight and wind. Moreover, there is more land available in rural areas to deploy methods of renewable energy. For example, wind turbines and solar panels. Rural regions allow for large-scale production of renewable energy while maintaining its agricultural value. Secondly, a positive feedback loop between the economic benefits and the deployment of renewable energy is caused by its economic promise in rural zones. The labor-intensive and focused development of renewable energy within rural regions would substantially increase job growth and security, with occupations ranging from all levels of experience and fields of expertise. It is predicted by the Union of Concerned Scientists that renewable energy is to generate over 200,000 jobs by 2025 if the standard of 25% renewable energy is achieved. Furthermore, potential investments may be made within rural regions to have farmers host wind terminals while continuing to maintain their own farms. Various government grants, loans, and tax incentives are also available to encourage rural areas to adopt renewable energy. For example, the Clean Renewable Energy Bond is a government loan with 0% interest rates, and the Rural Utilities Service Electric Loan Program possesses $40 billion that is available in loans for rural areas. Moreover, there's also potential for community solar programs to take place within rural settings. These projects would address and combat several of the obstacles that prevent the use of renewable energy within rural households. For instance, a rural household may have inconveniently oriented roof, not be in ownership of their residence, or not wish to permit any construction on the roofs of their buildings. Thus, community solar programs further encourage rural areas to further development of renewable energy. The result of these economic opportunities includes stimulated local economies of rural areas, improved public services provided by the government, which includes transportation. And the two, which were usually the two most significant downsides of living in rural regions, would become one of its most positive aspects. Finally, renewable energy expansion is more beneficial and efficient within rural regions rather than urban areas. The deployment of renewable energy within rural districts would also provide electricity to numerous people that live without access to stable electricity, as the majority of people who survive without access to stable electricity reside within rural areas. Proof of this trend lies in the statistic that over 500 million people within the rural regions of India still do not benefit from modern energy services. Also, the development of renewable energy within rural areas would improve the quality of life of its population by, for instance, reducing the cost of heating, electric bills, and the energy burden within rural households. Additionally, providing rural areas with stable electricity would result in a positive impact on the environment, as it would shift the unsustainable utilization of locally sourced biomass and the dependency on fossil fuels to renewable energy. Furthermore, deployment of renewable energy within rural regions may be more efficient because of the difference in the lengths of power grids. As the length of the power grid increases, the distance the electricity needs to travel increases, resulting in increased levels of misused energy in the form of lost electricity. Consequently, the lengthy power grids utilized within urban regions would lose increased amounts of electricity before reaching the destination, whereas the shorter local power grids within rural regions would reduce the loss of power, thus increasing its efficiency of renewable energy deployment in the form of energy loss. Conclusively, it is apparent that rural regions are the most desirable location for the deployment of renewable energy, as rural spaces effortlessly provide the required resources to augment the production of renewable energy. They possess great economic promise.
Thank you. 2 minutes for questions.
Okay, so my first question is that when you were saying about rural areas, you said that rural areas will give access to people who still do not have electricity. However, one of your teammates said that rural is already giving everything to the rural living people. Do you see this controversy? What do you have to say to this?
What I have to say is that they don't have to live with electricity, since when is electricity a necessity to survive? And one of the reasons we don't have it was because it's not developed there. There's always been this prioritization of developing urban areas because of the high density. And for those reasons, these areas don't have electricity, but they still manage to survive and thrive without it. But with it, imagine how much better they would be off.
So basically before, when you said that rural is giving everything to the people living in rural areas, that was potentially wrong because energy is not being given to all of the rural living people. Am I correct?
I guarantee energy is not given to all the people living in urban areas. It's everywhere. It depends on poverty. There are multiple factors that affect that.
Okay, my next question is that you said rural areas give access to people who still do not have you said that rural areas swiftly make use of energy, but as I mentioned, rural area is more widespread and the energy is much slower in getting to rural areas. What do you have to say to that?
I would say in some ways that could be false. If you have a farm and a building where someone is living and they have their own wind turbine, a farm near their building, obviously, as they would have to maintain it, the power grid is much shorter. The electricity has much less distance to travel. And if you compare it to any other area with urban areas, it's free wind, it's open. I don't understand what your question would really be referring to.
I think our time is over, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So we're gonna move on then. Thank you guys. Thank you, Rahim. We are now going to have Rabia, who gave us Team Urban's introductory statement, give us Team Urban's concluding statement. So Rabia, you have 4 minutes to do so.
There were many great points brought up by both sides. However, the detailed painting of urban areas catches the eye. Urban areas accommodate for much more than we can think of, adding bicycle lanes, promoting electrical modes for public transit, and creating an environment where everything you need is just 15 minutes away, making a commercial vehicle unnecessary. Whereas in a rural area, it is a necessity. There are more protocols for how the land is used, making sure nothing goes to waste, such as heating, building up instead of out, and having more planned open spaces. One thing that I have learned from this pandemic is the necessity of connections with society, and urban areas gives us this chance to embrace the diversity it holds. No one is left out as we keep finding ways to improve and grow, making sure that not only is there equality, but also equity, as we provide even small things such as a ramp for accessibility, shelters for those who need them. Natural disasters are unavoidable. And this is also something that cities take precautions for, creating high areas for when there may be a flood and training for such cases. With the climate changing, everyone is at risk with even forest fires and such. However, cities are taking extra measures and protocols to ensure safety, whereas this is something that is more difficult for rural regions. In case of a forest fire, a fire station or even a hospital would be very far away. In urban areas, due to infrastructure, there are also more opportunities for jobs, hobbies, and future planning. People of all backgrounds are coming together in hope for a better future in order to create a difference in this world, coming up with ideas for bicycle lanes, proper garbage disposals, energy efficient streetlights, and community gardens. Why would these people move to an area where these ideas would be wasted and it has nothing to offer them but open space? With those ideas, what will they do? Build more cities? The opposition had mentioned that urban areas are not realistic. Well, seeing that only 45% of the world takes up 85% of the space, as they also stated, how do you think the other 15% of the world will fit? More homes and opportunities to accommodate for 8 billion and growing population is unrealistic? The future is not guaranteed, but it sure helps knowing that we have things planned to make it even better. Every day, cities strive to create a more sustainable life by adopting even more recycling methods, running buildings on clean, encouraging all kinds of talents for the better, and acquiring more people to come up with even greener ideas. Urbanization also contributes to keeping family sizes small, as there are so many more chances out there to do what you love. However, even so, the world continues to grow. The world's population is estimated to increase to 9 billion during the next 15 years. It is an increase of 7 times the current population of the United States. We won't be able to provide the change by making the world look more like the countryside. As George Bernard once said, progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Looking back at the bread concept, like those few, are you going to hold on to unnecessary luxury, or are you willing to take a step forward so there are enough resources for our future generation and be the difference? The choice is yours. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Rabia. So we are now going to have Abhinayan, a grade 10 student attending Louise Arbor Secondary School from Team Rural. He's volunteering at Brampton Library because there are so many aspects of the library that he loves, and he's been volunteering for a little over a year. He's joined this debate because of the topic of climate change and sustainability. They perked his interests, and he's had a long interest and passion for trying to help solve climate change and help preserve Earth. So Abhinayan, you have 4 minutes to give us your concluding statement.
Thank you. In conclusion, it is very clear that rural areas have much more potential to achieve and develop sustainability compared to urban areas. As our team hammered out in our thorough arguments, rural lands have extensive amounts of benefits and resources to offer throughout longer periods of time, which allows us to support healthy, sustainable development and ensure that it thrives as time goes on. As opposed to urban areas, rural lands can guarantee efficiency with the help of mass industrialization, which in turn helps reduce poverty levels and can actually give people an affordable chance at life. Not to mention that it also supports renewable energy more effectively, which is becoming a new and healthier trend in recent times. Along with the tremendous efficiency it provides, rural areas are gaining more ground in sustainable planning and its implementation by excelling in the pillars of economic viability, environmental protection, and social equity. One can definitely say that these factors are everything that needs to be focused on to make sure sustainability is achieved. Besides these two heavy key points, rural regions can boast the greatest potential for renewable energy deployment due to its remarkable trio of ready resources, economic potential, and reaping benefits of many kinds. The expansion of renewable energy speaks volumes on the depth of sustainability that rural areas can achieve. To recap, rural lands clearly have the capacity to develop healthy sustainability and keep the earth healthy for ages to come. It may not seem like much now, but the mere necessity of needing to vitalize sustainability, giving everyone the best chance at life, and create a promising future lies only in the hands of rural areas. Let us be honest. Who wouldn't agree with developing rural areas that can save our environments, keep humanity alive and thriving, and maintain a healthy cycle of sharing resources? All in all, rural areas provide us with everything we need whilst establishing and encouraging healthy sustainability for society. Let us encourage and support the healthy sustainability of rural areas, and we'll be able to see change for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinayan. That concludes our debate, and we've heard amazing arguments from both sides. So once again, thank you so much to our debaters. Arij is now going to talk about what the rest of our evening looks like.
Okay, so the judges are going into a breakout room to go over the scores. I can share what the criteria is. We're looking at 5 main points, exploring the organization and clarity of the arguments provided, the accuracy and the logic of the arguments provided, the cross-examination and the rebuttal provided by the different teams, and also the presentation style. While we're scoring and discussing, we'll be back in about 10 minutes or so. Divya is going to be taking over question and answer session, and hope to see you soon.
All right, awesome, great. So that was an awesome debate. I think we can all agree that was really great. So while the judges are in the breakout room deliberating the results, we're going to take the time to talk more about rural and urban sustainability. And I'm actually going to share my screen right here. So just let me know if you can see that with a thumbs up or thumbs down. Is that good? You can see the slideshow? Okay, great, awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to be specifically talking about, how we can take what we just heard today in theory and how it translates to practice in the real world, and what you can do to make the region that you live in better, because everybody does better when everybody does better. But before we get started, I just again want to acknowledge that that debate was awesome. And in the beginning, people were asking in the chat whether you're from an urban region or a rural region. So this time, if based on what you heard, I'd ask the audience, but also the participants, what region are you from, and what region did you come into this event thinking would be more sustainable, and which region are you convinced now after the debate is actually more sustainable? So just a reminder, with regards to land use, we heard which region has more sustainable land and resource management practices when it comes to sustainable planning. We heard which region is making more progress in sustainable planning and implementation. And with respect to energy use, we heard which region has potential for more renewable energy deployment. I would again also like to remind everyone that if you have any questions about what you heard in the debate, this goes to the participants as well. If you have any other questions, or if you have any questions about what you hear now, just feel free to pop them in the chat. And LJ, who is the coach of Team Rural, or Bonnie, who is the coach of Team Urban, would be more than happy to answer it for you. So because we heard from Team Urban first, I will be talking about urban areas first as well. In terms of land use planning, we heard that citizens' individual carbon footprints is actually smaller in urban centers because less space is occupied. So there's less takeover of the environment by humans. And there's more landscaping potential like green roofs, green walls, etc. When it comes to planning, urban centers by design are suited for active and public transportation because everything is nearby. And since the space that is occupied is much less compared to rural areas, urban places can house a large number of residents in a smaller space. Thus, when policy change happens in urban areas, it also impacts a larger set of people. Urban areas are also able to leverage existing infrastructure for the development and supply of renewable energy from source to target, and there's more chances for incentives. So that was urban areas in a nutshell. Team Urban did a much better job of arguing their case than I did for sure, but now let's hop on to rural areas. So for rural areas, we heard that for land use, farming in rural areas is far more efficient. It can sustain the population, which becomes important when the population steadily keeps rising, and the maintenance of these farmlands enhances the local ecosystem. There are three pillars of sustainable planning for rural development, namely economic viability, environmental protection, and social equity in terms of potential. So rural areas display a lot if they follow these three pillars of sustainable planning. Renewable energy, if you think wind or solar, are also more readily available in rural areas, which is typical because that's where we usually see them, and they have greater efficiency and economic potential and benefits in rural areas. So that was just a recap of what we just heard. So how does this tie into what is happening around us? Well, because the Community Climate Council operates in the PO region, and because we've partnered with Brampton Library, who operates in Brampton, we're going to be talking about this region in specific, and also because these regions are special because these are suburban regions, which means that they hold the positives and the negatives of both rural and urban places. So for someone to take action, there's a lot of opportunities for us as citizens to be active in our community. So now we'll take a look at what's happening in Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, and what you can do to help make your place of residence thrive. Because as we just heard, they have their cons, they have their pros, but all of them have potential to be better and do better. So starting with Mississauga, Mississauga previously launched a Mission to Earth Climate Change Youth Challenge to recruit young people in the city towards local climate solutions, which is yay, young people. The challenge is now coming to an end, and you can see what the youngsters were up to in Mississauga and how you can support whatever solutions they came up with by attending the summit, and that is happening this Thursday. Moving on, Brampton is right now in the process of developing their official plan. So what the official plan does is it guides the city's official direction to achieve their 2040 vision. So this is important stuff happening right under our nose, because and they're hosting numerous public consultations around this plan. And for the youth participants who just learned so much about this, there's actually a youth consultation that's coming up on May 12th. So if you think that active transportation in suburban areas can do much better, this is your chance to let Brampton know if that is the case. Lastly, Caledon, with its latest updates on this, is joining Brampton and Mississauga by creating the town's Resilient Caledon Community Climate Change Action Plan. So Mississauga's is the city's climate change action plan, and Brampton's is the Community Energy and Emissions Reduction Plan, or CERP. So the climate action plans are actually super important, and they are public. So if you want to see them, they are available on your city or town website. And if you think that your city or town needs to do better in terms of environmental protection and planning, then review the plan that they've created and ask questions or hold them accountable by messaging your municipalities and making sure that they're meeting these climate targets that they've set out. Other issues that are happening right now that you could take part in that hold a great importance in terms of suburban areas is PO region-wide issues. So firstly, Highway 413. This project was recently received federal designation, which means that it's now going to get a federal environmental assessment, not just a provincial one. But that doesn't mean that the risk that this project proposes is averted just yet. So if you want to learn more about this project, you can follow the hashtag #StopThe413 on Instagram or any social media. PO Region is also in the process of reviewing their official plan. Again, what this plan does is that it sets the region's direction for how the region is going to move forward and develop and build until 2050. So through this plan, residents can urge the region to maintain urban boundaries so that we don't lose more of our farmland, as we just heard, to sprawl, and so that we get a chance to re-envision our region as better. So have your say, email your counselors or the city, or message them on social media. Engagement, any sort of engagement, whether you're asking questions or whether you're holding them accountable, does lead to action. And lastly, like each individual municipality, Peel Region also has a climate change action plan. And that is a plan that residents can review on Peel Region's website. So if you also were curious about how Peel Region is doing in terms of its climate targets, you can have a look at that plan and hold the region accountable for the targets they have set out to. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity for all of us to get involved. And as we just heard from all of our wonderful debaters, there's a lot of potential for both rural and urban areas. And us being in Brampton or Peel Region, we have the opportunity to leverage the positives that both rural areas and urban areas bring to our advantage. So I would just like to thank everybody for attending this debate. I am so thrilled to see who the winner is going to be, and we'll hear from the judges soon. But until then, I think I will just pass on the floor to LJ and Bonnie so they can say a few words about their teams.
Perfect. Thank you, Divya.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is LJ. I'm the coach for Team Rural, and I'm accompanied here by my teammate, Bonnie. Oh, there she is. She's the coach for the urban team, and I'm the coach for the rural team. The two of us, along with our team lead, Divya, who you just heard speaking with you just a little earlier, we comprise the political advocacy team for the Community Climate Council. The political advocacy team has been focusing on engaging with local community leaders and local politicians to promote environmental policy. Lately, we've been heavily interested and invested in finding ways to promote youth engagement in the environmental sphere. This collaborative project with the Brampton Library was enacted in order to do just that. We wanted to find a fun and engaging way to get more youth involved and thinking about sustainability.
Perfect. So first, we'd like to thank everyone attending our event today. I'm sure both teams have some friends and family tuning in tonight to support them. A huge shout out to Shraddha's grandma, who is actually watching from India right now. And thank you for your continued support for our teams throughout this process. So just a little recap for everyone of our preparation timeline. We started preparing for this event at the beginning of April and have been meeting every week for 2 hours. And in addition to this, LJ and I assigned readings as well. So we were ready to discuss at the meetings, which is incredible because all of these debaters are students on top of their volunteer commitments.
Yeah, and I'd like to sincerely thank each of our debaters for all the hard work they've put in over the past month. This whole event was obviously entirely optional, so we appreciate them taking the time out of their day, multiple days a week, to learn about sustainability and prepare for this event. I'd also like to thank Brampton Library for hosting this event and finding and connecting us with such enthusiastic youth. We've learned quite a lot through this debate event, both in terms of sustainability, research, and debating.
Perfect. And regardless of who wins, we hope that everyone learned a lot today about sustainability through different lenses, and hopefully this has helped everyone inform some of your decisions on whether rural or urban is more sustainable.
It's rural. But if you have any questions about the CCC or our work, that's the Community Climate Council, we'd be happy to take your questions in the chat here, or you can visit our website, communityclimatecouncil.org, or check us out on Instagram at Peel Climate Council. Thank you.
Great job, everyone.
Great work. And I think the judges are back.
Yeah, so we are now going to hear who the winner was, which is what we have all been eagerly waiting for. So I would like to introduce Elizabeth. She is our special guest from TRCA to speak a little bit about TRCA and what TRCA as an organization does, and also announce our winners. So Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Sure, yeah, I feel a little bit of pressure here. So I'll speak about TRCA firstly. So we are a very diverse organization working throughout the GTA. We primarily work on watershed protection, but there are a whole bunch of different pieces to that. So we have foresters, we have people that are working on restoration and infrastructure, trying to stabilize banks. We have a whole monitoring crew, a research and innovation crew. And then we have the team that I'm part of, which is education, training, and outreach, and really trying to work with the communities. So a real breadth and depth of work within the environmental sector. I think one of the strengths that we have as the Conservation Authority is being able to collaborate internally, but work on some of these really amazing programs and with amazing partners like Peel Climate Council and the library, and connecting with the community members that really, really make a difference and help us make the impact that we hope to make through our work. That being said, we are so impressed with the debate that just happened. It's really actually reaffirming the work that we do. And I want to thank all of you for that. It was evident that you put a lot of time and effort into your preparation and delivery for this program. And I just feel very lucky to be part of it. So thank you for that. That being said, I don't know if we want a drum roll, but we did make a really tough decision. This was such a close race. The arguments were great. There was one team that we felt did have a few more points, a little more diversity in the points that they brought up, and that was Team Urban. So congratulations. Again, everyone should feel amazing about the work that you did. It was really, really well done. But congratulations, Team Urban.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Oh my, what an enlightening evening today was. I mean, this is amazing. We are very, very happy to learn new facts, and there's so much more to learn, and there's so much more for all of us to do to keep the land that we live in sustainable. So this was an excellent evening. Thank you so much. Well, what can I say for the youth volunteers? You all were amazing. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for taking the time out of your schoolwork to accommodate and learn new facts and to deliver them with so much confidence. I wish we were meeting in person, because there would be a treat table for all of you after your work, hard work. However, we are going to award you with a certificate that is going to be, we haven't figured out how best to send that to you, but it is in unification with the Community Climate Council and Brampton Library. And I hope you treasure it, and to remind you of this wonderful, wonderful evening. So thank you, youth volunteers. And what can I say to Community Climate Council? You were the perfect mentors with your energy, your knowledge. You definitely raise the bar for our young people, and the perfect opportunity to celebrate all the youth, because you all are also youth, to celebrate this occasion during National Youth Week. So Community Climate Council, thank you so much. And TRCA, we have been partners for years. And Elizabeth, thank you for your time to make the very hard decision. I don't envy your position. Both of them, both the teams delivered with so much confidence, knowledge, and their, I guess it was a learning process for them. So thank you again to our youth volunteers, our mentors, and our judge, Elizabeth Wren from TRCA. And to you, our audience, we want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and attending this session, not only to learn new facts, not only to see where Brampton stands in sustainability, but also to encourage our youth. These are our future youth, and they are so knowledgeable that we appreciate the support that you have given us. And now I wish you all a very good evening. Please stay healthy, please stay safe, follow the health protocols, and hopefully all this will be over soon, and we will see you at the library branches soon. So thank you and good evening. Just going to see if there are any questions here that we need to answer through our chat. And as there are no questions coming through, again, have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you.